Hey everybody, Justin here. We just wanted to give you guys a warning about this week's episode. We had a guest on again, our friend from last week, Mike, was on, and we had some technical difficulties with his microphone. The audio quality is subpar. It's below our usual standard. We tried to fix it as best as we could. We made it to where we think that you can understand him, and we thought that was sort of the lesser of two evils. We didn't want to have to try to re-record the conversation, recreate the conversation. We thought that would be significantly worse than having to deal with subpar audio. It only gets really bad for about 10 to 15 minutes, around the hour 20 minute mark, somewhere in there. So apologies from myself, Mike, and Chris, and enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome to Casually Criterion. My name is Chris.
And my name is Justin. Casually Criterion is a podcast where Chris and I are going to watch a Criterion film every other week now. We started at spine number 1, and we're going forward chronologically from there. And this week we have a guest again on our show, Mike.
Hello, I'm back.
Yeah, nice to have you back.
Thank you.
I guess I don't know if for those who didn't listen last week, Mike is one of Chris and I's friends. We used to work together at Blockbuster. Mike and I went to film school together, and yeah, so that's it.
So here I am.
Good to have you on again.
Thank you.
So if you want to follow along with the podcast, give us feedback, give us questions, topics you want us to cover, you can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/casuallycriterionpodcast. You can follow along on Twitter and Instagram at casualcriterion. You can just email us directly at casuallycriterion@gmail.com. And of course, as always, rate and review us on iTunes. Give us a 5-star rating. Even if you hate us, give us a 5-star rating and then tell us everything you hate about us in the review.
And we'll be more prone to listen.
Yeah. And so 5-star reviews help grow the show. They help get us seen on iTunes, that sort of stuff. And yeah.
Today's episode is Spine Number 10, Walkabout by Nicholas Roeg. Roeg? How do you pronounce his name?
I don't know. I think it's just Rogue. I've always just said Rogue.
Rogue is cooler. That's for sure.
Rogue One. Yeah, for sure. And before we get into Walkabout, as always, we're going to do our bit of news and what's on our mind. And on these Criterion episodes, I guess we're going to keep that to strictly Criterion news, unless there's just something huge that we can't not talk about one week. But not a lot of Criterion news with like the New Year changeover, I guess. But we did get the Criterion Drawing, and this is something they do every year on New Year's Eve. They drop a drawing that has a lot of hints about some of the things that are going to come out in the next year. So did you guys take a look at the drawing?
I sure did.
Yeah, I sure did.
Is it something that, do you guys look at this every year?
Usually, yeah. I'm never very good at guessing what they are, but I still like to try.
Yeah. I like to look at it for as long as I can, which usually lasts about 10 minutes, and then I'm out of ideas. Mm-hmm. And then I go and look up what everyone else thinks.
I actually think it's fairly amazing when the internet descends on things and figures it out so quickly.
Yep, for sure. And yeah, I guess I've been paying attention long enough this is like my 4th year to do it, and it's always just super fun. I just look forward to this. I hope they never stop. Yeah, and I guess to talk about it, we'll just kind of go through what the drawings are and what the sort of speculation is, because most of this, I don't know about you guys, but most of this I didn't really have any guesses. I guess there are people a lot more film savvy that have better guesses, so we can just kind of talk about what they've figured out.
I think that works.
That'd probably be a lot less painful for people to listen to, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know, do you guys think we should go through these one by one, or do you just want to pick out like the big things that are the most interesting?
I would say probably just pick out the big things. I don't think people want us to go A through Q or whatever.
Yeah. Talk about every single image.
Yeah.
I guess some of the things I don't know a lot about. I guess I'll just skip the ones that I don't know a lot about. But like, so this tree, we'll start with the tree, which is kind of a mirrored tree. Mm-hmm. You can kind of see the top and bottom of it are both the same. I guess you can see all the roots underneath. And some of the speculation is for Tree of Life, the Terrence Malick film.
That would be a fitting movie.
Yeah, or The Fountain, I think, is the other one that's been...
I also saw some people speculated the Terry Gilliam Tideland. Because the cover...
Oh, yeah.
The cover
is the tree
very
with
similar
you can see
to that.
the roots.
Mm-hmm. I hope it's not
Same with,
Tideland.
Yeah, me too. I tried to watch that film. I tried to watch it once, never made it through, and one day I like made myself sit down and watch it, and still did not like it.
I guess Terry Gilliam did come out. They came out with Jabberwocky last year, so a Terry Gilliam movie isn't out of the realm.
Oh no, he's got some on here. He did Time Bandits as well, right?
Time Bandits
and Fear and Loathing.
Fear and Loathing, yeah. There's also a possibility that it could be Another Year by Mike Leigh.
Yeah, that's what I thought of at first when I saw this, and that movie came out at like the tail end of my Blockbuster days. So I remember looking at that cover on the shelf.
That movie's very good.
A lot.
I would actually really hope it is that movie.
Yeah, I've not seen it, and we have other Mike Leigh films in the collection, right?
Naked.
Yeah, Naked, which is very good.
It's one of my favorites. But yeah, Another Year is very, very good.
Yeah, and I guess all the other Malick is on Criterion, which is where the Tree of Life comes from. Because this image doesn't say anything about Tree of Life to me other than the fact that it's a tree.
Yeah, it's a tree. I don't remember any roots being prominent in Tree of Life.
The Fountain is the first thing I thought of.
Yeah.
But I think Terrence Malick or The Fountain are probably the most likely, I think. But who knows?
Yeah.
You see, I would love Tree of Life. That's one of my favorite Malick films. I think it's just super interesting and good. And I saw it a couple of times in theaters, and I really like it.
All right. What's the next one?
So next one
that we want to talk about.
Next big one. I guess the next one that I know anything about is the bowling ball that is heading for the bullets. I guess there's speculation whether that arrow is through this knight's head or whether it's bullets. The bowling ball pointed at the bullets.
Yeah.
But the big speculation of that one is Bowling for Columbine, which is the Michael Moore documentary. Yeah. Thoughts on that?
Seems relevant with all the mass shootings that we've had recently.
Yeah.
But how do you guys feel about Michael Moore?
I appreciate what he does. I don't necessarily think he's a very funny or engaging person to watch. But I think it's undeniable that the man can make a documentary. Bowling for Columbine is certainly one of the most memorable, entertaining, and thought-provoking documentaries. It's one of the first documentaries that I ever really saw.
Do you think it's thought-provoking, though? I mean, I kind of...
It might be thought-provoking. Some other people might say that it's button-pushing more than thought-provoking.
Yeah, I would say that.
But that being said, I tend to agree with a lot of Michael Moore's sentiments. Not all. But, I don't know. I think that just because the subject matter is political doesn't mean that he doesn't approach it from a place where he thinks he's doing the right thing, And I don't think he necessarily sets out to be like, how can I antagonize half the country? I don't think that's what Bowling for Columbine is. I think it's just our natural reaction to get antagonized. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, what do you make of the stories with like Fahrenheit 9/11, where there was the stories that came out of like that he wasn't being entirely like truthful, or that he was like they were like manipulated. I don't know too much about that, but I remember there was like it came out as like proven that he was not like telling
full truth, whole side. Lies of omission and things like that.
Well, yeah. So this is what I think about him. I mean, I guess I don't know about the 9/11, the Fahrenheit 9/11. I tend to agree with his politics. I guess I lean that direction, but I don't necessarily. I think his movies are barely documentaries. Does that make sense? Like a documentary to me will show both sides, and I don't think that he does that.
No, he doesn't even attempt to usually.
Yeah. I'm inclined to like him because it's what is that word when something agrees with you? Like
affirmation,
confirmation bias is what it is for me.
Right.
Because I tend to. Yeah. But I don't think that his documentaries are very.
I think they're getting worse. I think Bowling for Columbine is a little bit more. It's not necessarily both sides because it's definitely all on one side, but it doesn't feel quite as manipulating.
It doesn't. It doesn't feel like
to me.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like an
and
assassination attempt on George Bush, and which is what Fahrenheit 9/11 did. And I don't want to get into politics too much, but I would say that, but. I would kind of agree with you. I think that Bowling for Columbine is probably the one I like the most, and then I've liked each of them less since then. That being said, do you think that a documentary like that, where it doesn't show one side, and it only shows one side, doesn't show both sides, do you think that that's necessarily a healthy thing, given the way the world has deteriorated in media, and do you think it's necessarily a good idea to promote something where it closes off all but one point of view and demonizes another one? Because it seems like that could be not.
He's the first Facebook troll. Before there was Facebook, he kind of posted his meme. Basically his movies are just large memes that offend people and then start a big a talk afterwards.
I think as long as both sides are out there, it's okay for something to exist that does that. And I'm on board with it. Like, I think in a world where there's only one side and there are no other documentaries allowed to be made to tell the other side, then that's problematic. But I'm okay with it. And I think Michael Moore's entertaining. The movies are entertaining.
The documentaries are entertaining more than they are documentaries.
And I'm curious what kind of special features would be with that. Like,
would there be like an update, like a check-in?
Yeah,
this is how the world is now. I don't know.
Do you think are there any other possibilities that aren't Bowling for Columbine with this clue? Do you think, or you think that's just pretty much it?
Well, some people just put the bowling ball by itself, and that it could be the Big Lebowski.
Yeah, I wouldn't be excited, but I'm not as crazy about that movie as everyone else is.
I like the movie just fine, but I don't think it's in need of a special release attention that the Criterion Collection would give it. I don't think it needs the Criterion bump per se. I think it's doing fine all on its own.
Okay.
That being said, Criterion might need the Big Lebowski bump for their sales. Who knows? But I doubt it. I don't think it's going to be the Big Lebowski.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we'll move on. I just want to move on real quickly to the bottom left because I like these clues on the bottom left because they're a little bit more puns and stuff, and not quite so much like we have some things that are like direct images from like a film, like we have the dog with the hat, which is from like The Awful Truth, and that one's like really obvious. But I like this the bottom left. Everyone's kind of deciphered it to be the Scarlet M press, and it's a red M inside of a press, and I think that's funny. I like when they do the clues like that, where it's like you have to like kind of pronounce what's going on to get the movie title.
Where it's punny.
Yeah, but I don't know anything about Scarlet Empress. Do either of you?
No.
Yeah. Okay. And the same thing with this bottle. These bottles running around. That's extra virgin olive oil. And I guess there's like a sprint exercise in like running called suicides or something like that. So that one's virgin suicides, which I thought was really clever and fun. And this movie I have seen, and I think it's actually kind of interesting. Addition. It would be the first Sofia Coppola film, right?
Ooh, would it?
In the Criterion Collection?
I think that's right. Yeah, well, I think it's only a matter of time before she probably gets in the Criterion Collection for something.
Yeah, have you seen this film? Either of you?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like it? Dislike it?
I think it's probably my least favorite. Well, that's not true. I like the bling ring less, but I like it. But I think it's on the lower end of my favorite of hers, anyway.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't seen it for a few years, but I remember thinking it was good.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I forget the order of it, but of course, the Lost in Translation is my favorite.
Oh yeah,
of all her stuff, and then I think the Virgin Suicides is down below.
I think more than anything, I get excited that this might lead to more Sofia Coppola. Like we might then get Somewhere.
Yeah, Somewhere is the one I would like to see released on Criterion.
Or Lost in Translation. Yeah,
sure. I haven't ever seen
Somewhere is really good. Somewhere and Lost in Translation are my favorites that I can think of.
Is Somewhere more recent? Is it after?
Before the Bling Ring.
Somewhere was like 2011.
Yeah,
I think
something like that. 2012.
Maybe 2012, but I think 2011.
That sounds right.
But yeah, it's good. I really liked it a lot. And I guess the last big clue I want to talk about is this whole film truck river stuff. Is there anything else other than that, outside of that you guys wanted to touch on?
Yeah, so that's for the Filmstruck streaming, right?
Yeah, that particular clue. But any other clues?
Not anything
before that, no.
Anything I can think of, like graduation hats, skeletons. These are all so vague.
And any of the movies they're being associated with, I don't know a thing about.
Yeah, and some of them I'm just not convinced. Also,
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we'll talk about that, and I guess we have the pun with it's a film truck, and that's like Filmstruck, right? Very clever. And then we have this stream of water coming out, which obviously represents streaming. What
is the thing holding the camera in the boat?
I think it's a piece of meat, like a steak. It looks like it might be a T-bone, but that may be reading into it a bit too much. So what I'm seeing, it looks like there's a thing called like Meet the Filmmakers, which sounds kind of like a little episodic sort of series. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of other suggestions of like little series. There's this guy in a raft looking at a framed painting of a frame of film. Mm-hmm. And there's a YouTube series called Every Frame a Painting.
Wait, that's the thing that just got canceled. Is that why? So is it going to go on to Filmstruck?
Maybe.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know. That's some of the speculation because like they just ended their YouTube. Which have you guys seen any of the Every Frame a Painting
I have,
stuff?
Yeah.
The Seven Samurai one we watched.
I've been watching him for a few years. He did one. I think the first one I saw was like one on visual comedy and Edgar Wright. And so I've been watching their videos, and I really like them a lot. So I don't know if that means they're going to bring these YouTube videos that exist to Filmstruck,
or he's going to make new ones.
Yeah, or they're going to get the guys from it to like do some sort of series or do an Every Frame a Painting for Filmstruck, do new ones or something. But I don't know. It kind of just seems like they're advertising their like Filmstruck with this, like and potential things that are gonna not be movies. So like, how do you guys feel about movie clues that aren't related to like actual movie releases?
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it kind of takes the fun out of guessing movies if they're just gonna advertise their coming services. But that being said, I never am able to guess all the movies on these pictures anyway. So
right, and they distinguished it separately. I'm interested to dive into Filmstruck for a couple of months and see see all this stuff and the stuff that they do. But yeah, I don't mind that they do something else with it. Personally, how about you, Justin?
Yeah. I mean, there's part of me that hopes that there's like more to this than just like talking about a couple of like small things that are coming to Filmstruck and just to their streaming service. But I mean, I can't imagine it's anything else. Like, I just hope that there's something that we're all misreading, because it does feel a little bit disappointing because I would just like more movie titles.
Yeah, okay. I see.
And maybe it's because I don't use Filmstruck at this point. I plan to because it sounds interesting. It's just I haven't dove in fully yet. But I don't know. It's okay. It takes up like it's about a quarter of the amount. Like if we had a quarter more clues, I think that would be a little bit more fun.
Was it this year that Filmstruck and Criterion got together that it came out?
I think it was this year. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So
it wasn't that long ago they left Hulu.
Yeah.
Okay. This is interesting. Anything else you guys want to talk about with the drawing? Did you guys like this better than other years, or
I think I liked it less.
Anything thoughts?
That being said, I hope that it looks like the dog is from The Awful Truth, the Cary Grant movie with
it has to be
Irene Dune. I don't know how you say her last name, but that's a great movie. So I hope that actually is true.
Yeah. I'm always on board with more Cary Grant. I've loved all the releases that they've put out so far of him. I'm just happy to have him in like a good format, especially. I think The Awful Truth is one that has a pretty subpar DVD release.
Oh, definitely. But it's a pretty surprisingly dramatic movie. That was one of my first Cary Grant dramas.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've mostly seen comedies. Maybe not. Or maybe I just have watched his comedies on repeat viewings the most because I enjoy them a lot.
Oh, man. He's pretty great at that.
Yeah. I was actually a little disappointed to not see Bringing Up Baby because that's been so speculated after like His Girl Friday in Philadelphia story. To see The Awful Truth is a little bit disappointing to me because I just want Bringing Up Baby so bad.
Yeah, I agree with that. Bringing Up Baby is definitely one of my favorite Cary Grant movies that I've seen. For sure.
It's one of my favorite movies that I've seen, for me, personally. Cool. Yeah. All right. Well, are you guys ready to talk about Walkabout?
We sure are.
I know I am.
You're right. What's up here? We can see where we are from the top.
Well, where are we now?
We've just got to climb that one.
But you said where we are.
We're lost, aren't we? No, of course not.
So Walkabout, director Nicholas Roeg, I guess we can start with a little bit of history on him. It looks like he got his start as a film editor, which I think is kind of important with like the style of this movie, because it feels very editing heavy, like noticeable editing.
Yeah.
And I think we'll kind of get into that.
Crossfades, lots of crossfades.
A little bit, lots of crossfades and like freeze frames and like fast cuts and stuff. Mm-hmm. Things that, just things that like I think were probably planned and just come from that experience of editing. And then from there, he moved to being behind the camera as a cinematographer, and it looks like he did some second unit photography on Lawrence of Arabia.
Nice. Which
I thought was interesting. I didn't know. I've watched a few Nicholas Roeg films before, but this is my first time to actually like look up info about him. Yeah. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And then he became a cinematographer and he was a cinematographer on a funny thing that happened on the way to the Forum and Fahrenheit 451, the Truffaut film.
He kind of hit every single, like he did everything before he became a director.
He did the big stuff. I guess like he didn't write this screenplay. Which,
he didn't write.
I don't know if he wrote other screenplays of his in the future for some of his other films.
It looks like he only wrote 3 things. So no.
No? Okay. Interesting. So Walkabout was his first film as a director by himself. He co-directed a film the year before. Walkabout came out in 1971. Before he co-directed a film called Performance in 1970. And he also doubled as a cinematographer on Walkabout, which I think was interesting. It's always interesting to me when someone does that, like especially having done films, and I know Mike, you've done short films and stuff. Like I can't imagine having to worry about being like director and cinematographer.
No, especially back then, whenever you didn't have the benefit of digital, where you could just keep shooting and shooting and shooting until you got something that you know was what you wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess there was a little bit more uncertainty about how it would turn out because it was film.
Yeah, maybe explain like what the cinematographer's job is.
Yeah, well, so the cinematographer is basically the one who knows how to make the picture look the way that the director wants it, right? Like, so they work with the director, decide the shots together, and like it's the cinematographer's job to bring the director's vision to life. So like if the director wants it to look a certain way, the cinematographer would do that with like
he knows how to
lighting, choosing a film stock, choosing lenses and the camera. It's pretty big responsibility, which is why I guess, doing both of those sounds pretty daunting to me.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that there was a lot of setup on this, like where they had to do, because it was just, do you think they just went out in the wild and shot a bunch of stuff?
Luckily, going out into the wild helps with the lighting, so he would have to choose a lot of what looks best out there, like what lenses are going to make the desert look the way the director wants it to. I don't know what Nicholas Roeg wanted, but yeah, the cinematographer would basically go out there with the tools and try to realize the vision,
Yeah, and I guess with outdoors, like, I don't know how much lighting was done. Like, you generally do have to light outdoors, otherwise it looks pretty bad. I mean, it's like if the sun's overhead, if the sun's behind you, you have to have light on the actor's face, otherwise they're going to be super dark. So there is some lighting involved, and it's not always like electronic lights. They have bounce cards, they have like white surfaces that they reflect light from the sun to light an actor's face if they're in shadows. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty sure there's probably like some sort of like lighting on here. So it wasn't as easy as like, let's show up in the middle of nowhere and just point a camera and it looks great.
Right. Okay.
They definitely had to do that.
Now, let me ask you this. As someone who's shot things in the past, do you think that this is his... Okay, so this is Nicholas Roeg's first movie as a director. Do you think that shows? Can you see it in the movie? Do you think his visual style in this movie screams first-time director? Or do you think that it screams master at craft here,
It feels a bit like a cinematographer directing their first movie, I think, because there is so much focus on like shots and like from a storytelling standpoint, it doesn't necessarily like move super fast sometimes, and we probably like see some stuff that for like longer than we should, and like stay in moments longer than we should, and maybe get like that extra shot that he really likes into some scenes.
I would say that almost this movie is told primarily through the visuals. The audio is not even particularly mixed very well, and the dialogue's kind of hard to
The dialogue is really
sometimes
hard to understand.
So I would say that that's where the movie's strengths come in, is the fact that probably he was coming from the background of a visual storyteller.
Yeah, I did notice that. Like, it was tough to like understand some of the dialogue, and maybe a little bit as the accents, like they had English accents, and I think was the boy the hardest to understand for you guys?
For me,
yeah.
And I guess it's because he's a kid and he's not pronouncing super clearly. And actually, fun fact: the kid in the film was Nicholas Roeg's son. Yeah. Which, I don't know. I guess I thought about like watching it before I knew that like these kids are out there like in the Australian wilderness shooting a film, and like what kind of parents would allow that to happen.
Yeah, it's like little boy, go swim naked with the 17-year-old girl who's also naked in the Australian desert.
Yeah,
Parents,
and then
you're okay with that?
You learn that it's Nicholas Roeg's son, and you're like, okay, well, at least like he put his own kid in that position.
Yeah.
Didn't ask like other people's kids to do it. At least he was willing to put his own flesh and blood out there.
That's one conversation you don't have to have with like someone's dad and be like, look, trust me.
Probably the conversation he had to have with someone's dad was already rough enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, so back to the cinematography thing, and you were talking about the visuals showing through. I mean, the screenplay was only 14 pages long, so like that was, I guess most of the movie was improvised. So, that speaks to the visuals is what he was in for, I think.
Yeah, I think there's definitely part of the plan is like, let's go out and do these scenes. And especially like working with the Aborigine kid that was in there. They probably based a lot on like his experiences and like what he did. And I do kind of believe that the screenplay is one of the most important things about a film. And I think there are going to be exceptions to every rule where like sometimes a film with a minimal screenplay can turn out to be really amazing. But sometimes a lot of times I think the film is only as strong as like the script. Right. And so I do like, I'll just go ahead and start off. Like I didn't love this movie. Like it's not one of my favorite films that we've watched so far, or like, I don't know how often I would go back and revisit it. And seeing that the script was only 14 pages long, like really makes sense when you watch the film.
I wonder how much was left on the cutting room floor. Like did they find the movie in the editing room? You know, they just went out and shot a ton of stuff, and then
it definitely feels like that to me.
Yeah, like they probably had a few key moments that they knew they wanted, and then they made it in the editing room.
Yeah. Mike, what did you, I guess, think of the film?
I liked it. I wouldn't say I love it by any stretch of the word, but I did like it, and I liked it even more when it was done. Because like, it's one of those movies where you can be watching it the whole time, and you're engaged, but you're not sure how you feel until you see what it's all about, right? What you're actually watching this for. And when it all comes together at the end, I think it does work. It doesn't necessarily stand out as even my favorite one of Nicholas Roeg's movies that I've seen, but I do think it's good. And I actually enjoyed quite a bit, especially the second time. This is the second time I've seen it, and I saw it the first time a few years ago when I was probably too young to really appreciate it, I think. Whenever I was first getting into movies, when I was late teens, probably early 20s. I enjoyed it a lot more this time. I picked up on a lot more. So what do you think, Chris?
I think I liked it better than both of you. You're right. It's not. I mean, I enjoyed the visuals of it, and I really enjoyed it. It was a slower one. It's certainly not my favorite out of the Criterion ones that we've watched so far, but it's really solid, especially after the John Woo movies. It cleansed my palate, and I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, and I didn't want to say that I didn't like the movie. There's a lot to like in it, and a lot of good stuff going on. It's just on the whole, like I didn't love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can get into, the film specifically.
Sure.
And I guess we'll just start with the beginning of the film. The opening, I guess, which is like a kind of a quick cut, like sporadic montage of the city.
Well, actually, before that, the titles pop up, and it's random shots of like rocks and like cliff faces. And then he intercuts that immediately to the brick wall.
Yeah.
So like it cuts from like nature's walls, like natural walls, to like man-made, really symmetrical, like neat-looking brick walls, right? And then it kind of pans over to the right, and then you start entering into the city, and all like the breathing and the walking.
Yeah, and I think that's what that whole thing, the whole opening is about, is like showing us nature versus like the city versus the urban, and
because it ends the same way.
Yeah, and the
spoiler alert,
I guess, like the walking, like there's a lot of feet walking and obviously the film's called Walkabout. So I guess like there wasn't as much focusing on like the walking and like in the once they're in actual like wilderness and you're struggling to survive. Like I thought we might get a little bit more focus on, like I don't remember seeing anything where like their feet were like hurting. I know we get a couple of shots of like shoes.
All right.
right? But like they never really had any problems with their feet. So I don't know. I kind of expected
Yeah.
a little bit more to play out of that.
The only thing they really did, it focused on, I guess, in this was like the little kid got sunburned. Like there was never a time where like, well, I guess they found the watering hole and they hung out there for a while, but they never really focused on the survival aspect much. Like I was never worried these kids were gonna die.
Yeah, I was actually. They get to the water hole, and I think they were gonna die there.
Yeah, I think once they get there, up until that point, you are like, how are these kids gonna survive? Are they gonna make it? But it's pretty early on in the movie they find that watering hole, and then shortly thereafter get just the Aborigine guy. And once they're with him, you kind of never really worry about their survival, and it's kind of, how long is it going to take them to get back, and how long,
or is he even taking them back?
Yeah,
because they can't communicate. Where were they going?
Well, the girl especially can't communicate, but like the little kid can at least mime some stuff, but the girl just is like, you don't understand the same word I'm saying over and over again? Well, I'm not trying anything else. You better just learn to understand me.
Yeah, she was kind of a jerk about it. I can't make it any simpler. Yeah. Water.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, and I noticed throughout the movie, she never really communicated with that kid. Like she made googly eyes at him a couple times but like she gets the little kid to communicate with him, her brother. Yeah.
And I think that was the thing, is that you can make it simpler, because then he makes the motion of like drinking water, and the guy understands immediately. So it's like, yes, you can make it simpler, but I think she's just so used to.
Well, I think
being a little spoiled, I guess.
Yeah. I think she represents the city, and she's not going to go wild. She refuses to.
Her unwillingness to change.
Yeah, and then he's the wildness, so I think there is a duality, like Lord of the Flies style type stuff. And then her brother, takes off the shirt, and of course he gets sunburned because of it, but he gives up the city life much easier than she does, and she's much more determined to make it back to the city. So I think by not communicating with him, that's her way of keeping in touch with
with the city.
The city, but there's a word. What is it?
Civilization.
Yeah, civilization.
Yeah, right. And that also plays into like the radio, because they carry the radio around with them like the whole time, and it's not necessarily like crucial to their survival, but they have it. They listen to it, like even through the end of the film. Towards the end of the film, they still have it, right? Like when they're at the
they get to the road.
They leave it. They leave it at the house, but
yeah,
they had it up until that point.
Let's talk about the very beginning part before we I know, but like the dad. So we've had the opening sequence.
Yeah, we can talk about how they get there.
Yeah,
which is they get brought out there by their dad. Looks like they're going to go on a picnic, and then he's
doing a geological survey, right? He's looking at like stones on his map.
He's like
something like
he's
that.
Like looking. What it read to me as is he was looking for places where like minerals might be, and crossing off sections where he knows they're not. And I say that because of who they meet later on in the movie. Whenever they come to that like old abandoned the trailer neighborhood, where like only that one guy's left, and he said the mine is closed down. I assume that their dad was put out of work or let go or downsized or something like that, and that's probably what led to him taking them out there and snapping, I guess, is because it seemed like he worked for the mine to some degree because he was looking at notes about geological.
Yeah, and so snapping, what happens is the girl and the boy go out and set up the picnic, and the dad's still in the car, and then all of a sudden he just starts firing a gun at them and shooting them and trying to kill them.
The way it started was really surprising to me. I mean, I knew it was going to happen, but the little boy is he's got a little green water gun. He's like, bang, bang, and then all of a sudden, like a return fire comes, and I don't even know that. I think he doesn't realize the danger he's in at that time.
Nah, she does though.
Yeah, she realizes what's going on right away too. She knows And I don't know if maybe she had her suspicions or not, but
she never once like calls her like, Dad, what are you doing?
Yeah, why would you do this? She's on top of it.
Yeah, and it cuts to like the dad's perspective. He's like watching the little boy play with the squirt gun, and the little boy actually has the squirt gun in his mouth, and he's like pulling the trigger, like sucking on the water, you know? Yeah. And he's like standing on this like rock pile formation, looking like a little plane or something. And I think the girl even goes to the car to get something out for like the picnic, and she even makes eye contact with her dad, and they like look at each other for a second, and they don't say anything. And it's a weird moment because right after that,
the whole scene has a weird vibe to it because you get the sense that something is wrong. Like I guess like we've all seen the movie before, right? This is not our first time to have seen it.
Correct.
Oh no, this is my first time.
This is your first time?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and I guess if you read any sort of synopsis of the film, you know that they're going to get lost, but like they're driving out there and they're on E. Like we get a shot of like the gas gauge, and they're on empty as they're pulling up. So like, I don't know. You just have this whole sort of like weird vibe going on, and part of it's like the sound and the number of flies in the scene. Like it's really unsettling that it doesn't feel like it's going to lead to some like disaster ever, like accident that strands them out there. It feels like something weird's about to happen.
Even the ants, right? Like the flies in the car and the little boy's face, and the ants encroaching on their picnic. It's like they go out there.
Nature's taking over.
Yeah, and it's like nature's already trying to like get in like onto their civilized afternoon. And there's just already something off about it. And even like when the dad comes home that day before they even leave, like he's like watching the he's watching his kids swim in the pool, and it's like put up right against the ocean, so you see them swimming in like this little natural man-made pool backdropped against like the vast wondrous ocean, you know.
So they were married, right? The mom was cooking food at the beginning. It was not real clear.
It's not real clear, but we assume, I think.
Yeah. It was funny, the mom was listening to a recipe. Have you guys ever... So the recipe that was on the radio was... It's actually illegal now. But what you do is you take a baby bird while it's in the egg, and it's alive, and you like pour it with brandy, and you basically drown it in brandy. It's very cruel and inhumane, and then you eat the bird whole. I think I saw like a Anthony Bourdain episode where he actually ate it, but I thought that was funny, like nature and treating nature a certain way.
And also you're young.
Yeah.
And I guess, so when I watched it, I thought that like there's I didn't really see an explanation for the dad's actions at all, right? And I guess, Mike, it sounds like you're saying he was doing the geological survey, so like you're connecting him with the mine's closing.
Yeah, it makes sense.
He's been let go.
I don't think it's important either way, even if that's just a coincidence and he was just looking at geological maps and notes and things like that before deciding to go nuts. I don't know. I think they did it. Wiles put it in there, like Wiles make him look at a map and then mention the mine closing down later. I assumed it had a lot to do with all that, but maybe not. I don't think it necessarily matters why the dad snaps.
No, and I guess I guess what I wanted to ask is like, is that important to the story at all? Like I took his map as like him trying to figure out not necessarily figure out where they were, but like make sure he was in a place that's like pretty far out there so he could kill him and not have anyone around. Not that it matters, because I guess I don't know if he planned on killing himself, but I don't know. What do you think, Chris? Do you think think that it matters?
It doesn't matter. I think the geological survey, we talked about the script only having 14 pages. Maybe there's a further explanation on the cutting room floor as to what was going on, and they decided that ultimately it didn't matter. He's the inciting incident,
right?
And ultimately why he did it, and because the kids don't understand, and so we shouldn't either. We can guess, but we don't need to know.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like the perspective, like it being from the kids.
And and another thing that kind of brought it back early is they even, before they get to that town and talk to that guy, or the abandoned like trailer neighborhood where all the mine workers used to be, they actually mention it again, where the little boy's like, was it an accident? And then she said yes, and he's like, no, it wasn't. And she's like, well, I said I don't know, Where like that's the most they ever really talk about it after it happens. It's just that quick little conversation a few days later.
Yeah, they weren't really they weren't really torn up about it. It didn't seem like. I guess they were more worried about surviving.
Yeah. But there's one thing in regards to the dad's actions that I was curious about, and it's a scene that happens before they find the watering hole when they're trying to survive. The girl says she always heard that you need to, if you're ever out there, she says something like some sort of survival tip she heard of, like you need
her
to,
uncle told her something. In the
like
army,
salt.
they would eat salt.
You need to eat salt. Yeah, when they're in the army and they're in the desert, they need to eat salt. So she pulls out. Hold on, there's a very loud car. I don't know if you heard that.
I do.
Yeah. So they pull out the salt and they eat it, and the little boy says, "This doesn't taste like salt." Right? Mm-hmm. So what I thought that might be was some sort of indication of it might be like cocaine or some sort of drug that their dad had. And I was maybe connecting that with like explanation for some of like the reason that he did what he did. I don't know. It could be a little bit of both for sure.
I looked up the salt thing because I was like, is that true? And apparently it is true that they used to eat salt, and it's also a very bad idea.
Yeah, I think it would dry you out more.
Would dehydrate
you. I'm not sure, but they were like, don't ever do this. The other thing, so they're getting shot at, right? And she runs back and like to the picnic. I guess it's after he's already killed himself, and and she just like grabs the blanket and doesn't grab a lot of food. She just like flings all the food everywhere. And I was like, knowing what this movie ends up being, like that they're going to wander off, I was like, no, get all the food.
Yeah, for sure. So as they're surviving, we do see some nighttime scenes, and I just wanted to get you guys' kind of thought on it. They use a technique called day for night. And I guess what that is shooting during the daytime and underexposing it, or bringing the exposure down in post and kind of tinting it. You tend to tint it a little bit more blue to represent nighttime. And this is done sometimes successfully and sometimes not very successfully. But how did you guys feel about the use of that in this film? Did it bother you at all?
It didn't bother me.
No, it didn't bother me. I've seen a lot more egregious use of day for night in several westerns. This is relatively
it's pretty bad in
minor offense.
early. Yeah, it's pretty bad in early James Bond as well.
Yeah, it's really bad in anything made in America that needs to be outside at nighttime before 1960, I imagine. Or it just, I don't know. Day for night. It took a while for it to really, and it still doesn't look very good.
Yeah, I've seen worse for sure. It's just something from a technical standpoint. Every time I see it, it troubles me a little bit because it never just looks quite right.
Everyone's squinty and sweaty, and like there's clearly like super intense shadows. Yeah, super intense moonlight shining on all these rocks, and you're like, man, they better be careful. That moonlight's gonna give them a sunburn.
Yeah, and I think one of the key things when you try to do it is you try not to see very much sky.
Yeah,
because that's kind of the dead giveaway. No matter how much you underexpose, like the sky's still pretty bright.
That being said, though, it seemed like dusk in this one. It actually was pretty good day for night as far as the sky. I thought like it looked like it could just be like naturally twilight time, or like like right before nighttime or right after it. Probably on the cliff, kind of like they're in that little like area, and they're kind of like I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I think I just was curious about that because it's something that I was obviously thinking about while watching it.
Yeah.
Okay, so they struggle to survive. They're getting pretty gross and dehydrated and whatnot, and they find the watering hole, and that's obviously it seems like they hang around it for a couple of days. Or is it a full day?
They spend the night there. So they find it, they spend the night, and the water's gone in the morning. And then at that point, I think the girl's kind of given up. She's just laying there, and that's when the Aborigine shows up.
Yeah. We meet the Aborigine, and he helps them along. And I guess this might be a good time to talk about it, but like for this sort of movie, you want the main characters to learn how to survive in a way, and like part of the inclination I got from like the opening is that these kids are, upper class. They kind of have everything handed to them. It seems like they're in a private school because she's like in kind of a school uniform.
They're not even Australian.
They're not Australian. They're British.
Yeah, so they're out of their element for sure.
And before she gets out of the car for the picnic in the beginning, they're listening to like it's on the radio as like a silverware etiquette where they're talking about what is the proper fork to use and what to do if you accidentally pick up the wrong fork, which is I think actually a really funny like contradiction to juxtaposition is the word. Yeah. Next to like the wilderness and the situation they're about to be in, where like the last thing you'd ever worry about is like forks and stuff.
I actually have written in my notes, I think at some point the boy is like doing his multiplication tables or he's bragging about it, and I was like, that seems like the most useless thing that they have going for him right now.
Yeah. But so with the watering hole, they walk and they stumble up on it, and that's okay, I guess. But like, it sort of feels like when they're truly desperate, some sort of answer comes out to them. And how much work do they actually do to survive, or did they just kind of luck out the entire time?
They lucked out. I mean, she opens the can of tomatoes.
That's true.
to get water out.
Yeah.
But and they walk for a long time before they find the Aborigine.
And she keeps their school clothes really
nice.
fresh looking.
Yeah, she is certainly she is clinging on to civilization for sure.
Yeah, well, so how do you guys feel about that? Like with like the main characters kind of just happening into like the solutions to their problems versus like, did you want them to learn how to survive on their own? Do you think that matters? Because
no.
I don't know that it matters. Yeah,
I don't think that's like
Not
when
to
I
me.
read this. When I read the synopsis, I thought that's what it was going to be. I thought it was going to be like a what's a Tom Hanks movie?
Castaway,
like, where they're on their own and they have to start fires on their own and they have to figure that out. But that's not what this movie's about.
I don't think it is either. I think it's more about what like the overall effect of this experience on them and how that affects them going forward. And
I almost think it's more of a meditation. Like, well, I mean, we're not there yet, but the ending is a thing. But like society, I think there's definitely, it's speaking about as to what society is, and then what the wild is, and then these two people meeting in the middle, and then there's like kind of this battle for the son, or the little brother.
Yeah,
to a certain extent.
I kind of view it as one of the big themes of the movie is just, I guess, kind of I don't know what the word is, but like people coming into a land and reshaping it in their image, and trying to reshape a wild, untamed land. And so it's not really touched on, but we also see it in the way that she treats the Aboriginal boy, right? She doesn't want to talk to him. She doesn't want to communicate with him particularly very hard. Like, she likes him just fine, but she doesn't respond to his ways. She ignores them, and is quite cold towards just anything involving his culture and society, I guess. So
is gentrification the word?
That sounds right.
Yeah, I think so too. Gentrification is the word. It's the act of like coming into a housing district and improving it, like a poor housing district, and improving it so that middle class people can live in there.
Right.
As kind of the.
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
kind of what I was trying to hit
the
on earlier with the mines, because I know in Australia I was reading about this, and that was a big thing going on with the Aboriginals in Australia at the time, and even now, which is the mining companies moving in and making the protected lands smaller.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the Aborigines are very similar to the Indians in our country.
Native Americans.
Native Americans.
Yeah, Native Americans. Oh, please edit that out.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess when we talk about meeting the Aborigine, I guess, like, and what happens afterwards, like, once we're with him, we kind of get this this sort of, like, harsh reality of what it takes to survive, like, when he's hunting and stuff. Like,
that's how we meet him. He's hunting that lizard, right?
Yeah. And I don't know. I assume that we're seeing legit animals being hunted.
Oh, for real?
Like,
Yeah, they are. I read a thing. There's two things that kind of made this movie: the nudity and the killing of actual animals. Both came out right before those laws were passed.
Well, because wasn't she 17 years old? So they had to, like... The only reason they could release the nudity is because it wasn't at all sexual?
Yeah, something along those lines. So this movie was originally rated R, and then they resubmitted it without cutting anything, and they changed it to PG because it's not sexual, it's just nudity. But even so, I think if you were to try to submit a movie now with, and the other thing is she is 17 years old, and so like there's like if she had been 16, it would be illegal. But the rule is now. Somehow they got away with it because it's not sexual, because it's under 18. Because the rule got changed, like, I think in 2003. I think is. Anyways.
Well, anyway.
But we can talk about, I guess, the nudity later if there's anything else.
Yeah, we can get to that.
But let's stick to the killing of the animals and the hunting, because it's all very brutal, which is realistic. And I guess, why do you guys think that he would put the that sort of like brutality on the screen, and how did that affect you?
Well, to me, the brutality, like there's a scene where he's hunting the kangaroo and he kills it, and then it's intercut with a butcher, and I think he's saying that so I guess because he's hunting this animal, it seems more brutal because he's killing it, but the butcher seems just as brutal. Because as he cuts up all the different pieces of meat.
Yeah, is he saying it seems more brutal because we're seeing it go from living to dead.
Yeah.
But like cutting it and putting it next to like someone hacking up a kangaroo, it's not really any different. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, kind of saying, well, we're not that civilized either. Like this seems really horrible or gross.
That felt a little on the nose for me, to be honest with you. I don't know if that was necessary.
To intercut
like
with the butcher.
we get other scenes of white people and their version of hunting, and how it differs. I don't think we necessarily, like, it seems to me like it was intercut with the butcher thing, just so it's like, hey, don't not like this kid who's killing a cute kangaroo. It's like, that's kind of how it felt to me. Like, I don't think we needed, like, we saw the kangaroo meat earlier in the movie, but it seemed like one of those directorial flourishes where he was just, I mean, it's not bad, but
I don't think it's necessary either, because like you said, we in the opening montage we get like a sign that's like kangaroo meat for sale, and we see like a hand grab like a bunch of like ground up kangaroo meat, and I think we kind of get the idea of like, you know, that kangaroo dies somehow.
Do you think he's trying to say kind of that we're not that different? So like we have our civilization, but we're not really that civilized, or you know. We think we're civilized, but we're...
I think it's definitely trying to compare the two. I don't know if it's trying to say that we're all just uncivilized, because I don't think he's necessarily making the statement that like killing animals is uncivilized. I think it's saying... I think it's just trying to say, like, you're not used to seeing this brutal way that this Aboriginal boy is spearing a kangaroo. Most people watching this aren't going to be familiar with killing animals that way. Here's a shot of a butcher, just so you don't think it's too violent and sad. That's all it seemed like to me. Like, it seemed like kangaroos are cute, and audiences in the 70s aren't going to be super familiar with kangaroos, and they're not going to like this unless I make my point. But that could be totally wrong. You know, that's just my assumption. But either way, I don't think that cross-cutting was 100% needed.
Well, it may not be needed, but I think he's, like, he does this throughout the film, like with the kangaroo meat at the beginning, like where I think he's trying to say something with it, so it may not be needed because he's already said it, you know, earlier. But that's kind of my thought on that.
I think the meat in the beginning is like more comparing it to like the urban life where it's like we can just go buy kangaroo meat and that's it, and we don't have to get our hands dirty or work.
There's a lot of it.
Which is, yeah. So, yeah, I don't know that the message is too clear.
And it may not be that he really had that much of a message. Like, well, and I think you can read into it because it is so open, you know. But like, he may not have. His reasons may not really matter as much because. Does that make sense?
Well, once he juxtaposes, I don't know the proper term of juxtapose those images together. It doesn't matter what he intended because it's there now, right? It's there now, and we're all having a reaction to it right now. You know,
Yeah.
so
I think a person who is a vegetarian for reasons of like being against killing animals would see that different than someone who loves eating meat and has no problem watching an animal be butchered or hunted, right? Like, it's up to the audience.
Yeah, or a young person who is not familiar with kangaroos and thinks they're cute.
You really, Mike? Do you think kangaroos are
I think
cute?
Mike loves kangaroos.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, man, they're unique to Australia. The only people that have ever really seen them in real life live on that continent. The rest of us, they're a rare treat for kangaroos, seeing them in movies.
You know, they're like rodents over there, right? Australians.
Oh no,
hate
yeah, I've
kangaroos.
seen videos of like big scary kangaroos like pounding on some dude's like window, and I was just like, good lord, this would be a nuisance if I lived there.
Yeah.
I'm sure I would hate them. I'm sure they're like deer but worse.
Yeah, I think worse. I think they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Scary.
Well, so I guess last thing on the animal killings, like, it's pretty impactful to see like a real animal be killed because we're not used to it. Like, did you guys think that was necessary? Do you think it helped
It's not necessary. I don't think
the mood of the film?
Well, the hunting scene sequence at the the white man hunting scene where they kill that cow.
Yeah.
And then they slice it open and all that blood just comes rushing out. I mean, I don't think you should kill animals for movies, but I don't think I've ever seen a cow get killed and seen all the blood just pour out, and that was interesting. I don't think we need to kill any. You know, I'm still against the killing of cows in movies, but
Let me ask you guys this though, since we're talking about the killing of animals, all the animals that were killed in this movie were likely put in there to make some kind of message. But do you think that message is negated by the fact that he clearly had so many animals killed to make his message?
I guess it depends on the message.
Yeah, it depends. If you think the message is to not kill animals or something, then
there's the scene where the white guys come in and they just waste, right? Like, they just kill with a gun indiscriminately and kill more than they need and leave all the corpses. So do you think they actually killed that many animals just to make that scene? And if so, is that scene counterproductive to its own message?
It depends on what they did with the.
Yeah, I think we'd have to know like the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
It's like, did they actually use the animals that they hunted and killed for like crew meals?
Yeah, because I think just
If
killing
so,
them,
then I think it's okay.
yeah, just killing them for the movie is a waste.
Right, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Like, I don't know the scenario of what actually happened with those animals, but it seems like a lot of animals were killed for this movie.
Yeah,
I think that scene being in there and like you said, the point of the scene where they're driving around and hunting is it seems that they're just killing to kill. They're not doing anything. They're wasting it. And I think like putting that scene in there leads me to believe that they wouldn't have done that with the animals they kill in the film. Maybe I'm just being optimistic and like wishful thinking.
Right, yeah, I hope so. I hope you're right. I haven't looked into it further.
What is the story with the? I didn't look it up. I was wondering if either one of you guys did. With the Aborigine actor, like, was he actually? I mean, I think he was actually Aborigine.
I think he was. I read that he didn't speak any English or anything. Like,
so do you think
they just got
he showed them how to do those things? So like he was actually doing it, right? So then he could, like, possibly behind the scenes have like actually killed him and then like cooked him and stuff like that.
Then there is like a borderline documentary feel about some of those scenes, and like I guess you could I justify it, I guess, with like you are just documenting what he would be doing anyways. Well, maybe not he would be doing, but like an Aborigine hunting would be doing that, right? Like there's a bit of a documentary justification there.
Right. Well, and it is fascinating to see, right? Like when he chases down a lizard or a kangaroo or whatever, and he's like, or like what was like a steer that he was almost getting ready to.
Oh, yeah, he was wrestling it.
Yeah. Like it's fascinating to watch that because, I don't know, it's just not something that like because we're all so lucky, we don't have to do that, So it's like it's crazy to like. Watch him just like run on 2 feet with a couple sticks and like spear something real fast and then go beat it to death. Like there's a violence to it that we're not familiar with, but it's also fascinating to watch,
Yeah,
that's the documentary like aspect of it that seems really engaging.
Yeah, and I guess somewhere in there, I'm not sure where this happens, but we get a little bit lighter here. There's these transitions during some of the montages that are basically like page turns.
It's when the little boy is telling the story. He's telling a story, and I didn't exactly follow the story because I don't think the boy's telling it very well. But yeah, each time they have a transition, there's like a page that flips down there. I have it written down in my notes as well because it's so interesting. I hadn't really. I mean, what did you think? Did you think it was okay, or is it just too flashy?
I associate that with like bad editing. And I think that's a modern sensibility about it. Like, some people give like George Lucas guff for like the wipes in like Star Wars as like his editing transitions, but like transitions in general outside of like crossfades, I've always like seen as like amateur.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think, Mike?
I think you can get into. I think it can be pretty tacky sometimes. I think whenever you put like cheap effects on there, I don't mind so much like the occasional swipe or like the circular transition that shows up, like in the occasional Star Wars movie or something. I actually kind of liked the page turning in this one, but wasn't there like a sound effect also?
I think it did make.
I think it was like a page sound effect.
I don't like that.
Turning.
I didn't like that at all. I thought that was a little.
Let me ask you guys something real quick. Back to Star Wars, but like, so apparently Rian Johnson had more swipes and fades like that than in any other Star Wars previous. But did you guys notice that there was so many of them in there?
No,
I didn't notice.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I'm used to the visual language and editing style of Star Wars.
But yeah, we are. But I noticed them in the prequels. Like they were annoying in the prequels, right?
Yeah, I think that has to do with George Lucas not being a very good director.
Right. Well, yeah. So if the movie's good, or if you're into the movie, you don't necessarily notice the transitions as much.
Or if they're set up within the scene themselves, like if he knew at the end of the scene I'm gonna have a swipe transition, so it's gonna like leave off on a beat where that feels normal. Whereas, like, it feels like in the prequels, I just watched those actually not too long ago. There's nothing, those are bad movies. Those are made badly. They're not, they're paced badly, they're edited badly. They're even mostly acted badly. Even Natalie Portman sucks in those movies, so.
Yeah,
Ewan McGregor's the only one believing in anything that he's saying.
Yeah. Let's not go too far down the Star
Wars. But no, I think it has to do more with the. I think transitions like that, they work best when in the hands of someone who knows how to use them.
Yeah. So is it okay to use it in this? Like, because it's calling attention to itself. He's telling a story. Like, what do you think?
I don't like it because it distracts me in general. But in the movie, he is actually doing a lot of things that call attention to the editing, right?
Right.
And I think this goes back to like him working as an editor as well. Like there's a lot of like double exposures. There's a lot of like fades and like where we have like two images at once, like fading into each other for like a long time. There's a lot of like freeze frames where an image will freeze or we get like just a still image as opposed to like. Well, a shot or whatever.
Like 500 blows at the very end of it.
400 blows.
Yeah, the 500 blows, Chris?
That's the sequel, guys.
Oh, yeah. Okay. But so there is a lot of that sort of like purposeful editing. Like there's sort of the rule of editing that like if you notice the edit, that's bad. Like you don't want the audience to notice your editing and like make it very seamless. And there's obviously a deliberate attempt in this film to not do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But so I don't know if that makes the page flip transitions okay in like the context of the film, because there are so many other things that are calling out the editing. But like, I just know when they happened, it threw me off and made me notice the edits specifically, and it may also just be like my bias is like seeing that sort of thing as amateur, and like I guess like film school, seeing like short films where people like don't know what they're doing and they put in like just really silly transitions. It feels like a PowerPoint slideshow at some points, right?
Well, it's definitely, it takes you out of it as soon as you see it. Like you're like, this is a movie. So I
Yeah, well, he's a first-time director, so maybe he was just excited to try something. At that time, transitions don't have as many options as they do now. You know, there weren't so many tired, old, stupid transitions that we've all written off as quaint and stupid and tacky.
Yeah.
Whereas,
I think there's some. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm saying like maybe back then, the novelty of any kind of new transition was still a novelty and not so much. Something silly.
It's like they knew they could and never stopped to ask if they should.
Right. Or like
at that point,
improve? It's just like it's just another tool we discovered we can do. Let's go ahead and do it real quick. I don't think it's a detriment to the movie per se, but I agree.
Yeah.
I think it's not needed.
I don't know if it's a first-time director thing either, because the other Nicholas Roeg films I've seen, which I've seen all of them once. This is the first one that I've watched a second time. But when I think back to those films, the things that I remember sticking out to me are like weird editing choices and like punchy editing that like sticks out to you is what I remember about his other films as well. So I think it's just a style and intentionally designed. So I guess I don't necessarily know that it's bad that it takes me out of it always. Like I think it's okay.
It's certainly no Man Who Fell to Earth. I remember that movie had some transitions that were weird.
Yeah, exactly. That and what's Insignificance, the one with like Marilyn Monroe and Albert Einstein hanging out. There's a lot of weird editing in that.
I don't think I've seen that one, but no, I can imagine that.
Okay, so I think a big part of the film, especially like the latter half, like mid to latter half, once like the survival element kind of leaves the film, there's a weird sort of like sexual tension between the girl and the Aborigine. I wanted to ask you guys if you picked up on that, but I think it's impossible to not, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think it happens like from her end fairly quickly. Like there's shots of his butt, like she's looking, because he's not wearing very, very many clothes, right? And I don't know if she's offended by his nudity or if she's checking him out. But she's definitely looking.
Yeah, so when they start following him, they're walking like you get it pretty immediately.
There's that. And there's also a shot one time where they're sitting down, and she like looks at his like loincloth and like his crotch area while he's like sitting down, and she like there's a clear shot of her like looking down at it, and then it cuts back to her face, and she like as she reacts uncomfortably or something to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's a bit inevitable and a bit a part of sort of this journey. Like, I don't know if this is like a coming of age movie. I don't necessarily think so, but we have
it's a walkabout. It is a coming of age movie.
Technically, I guess. True. It's true. That is what the Walkabout is, but I mean, he seems fine. He doesn't seem...
He's on a walkabout.
Yeah.
Like, I think that he is on his walkabout. So he's, around the same age, and he's trying to fend for himself. What does the title card say? Like, I forgot, but like how you go on your walkabout and you use the land in any way possible. And did it say something about even using each other? I forget. You remember the title card?
I don't remember exactly what the title card says.
Okay.
But yeah, the Walkabout is a coming of age sort of thing, but I guess it doesn't feel too much like a coming of age movie too much outside of this aspect of it, of like this sexual tension between the two. I guess like they're both like teens.
Yeah, but I think it's a major part of the film, the second half.
Yeah, I agree. I would say it's ultimate to his story for sure, because he is on his walkabout. He meets these people. He helps keep them alive, and when they get to the house, I don't want to skip ahead too far, but like when they get to the house, and he's clearly feeling the right feelings because she's feeling them too. Right, like every time they walk into another door, they get to squeeze by each other, and they're feeling the same feelings. But he has no reason to like hide himself or not to act on them, whereas she does because it's inappropriate or it's not proper or she's not that kind of person or whatever. Right?
I think, let's go back to the tree real quick, because I think you're making a good point, but I think without the tree part of it, because. So they're out there. They've just been hanging on the tree where she's hanging upside down and her skirt's flopping up above her.
Sexy tree.
The sexy tree, right. And then, but so it's night. This might be one of your day for night scenes, actually.
Most likely. I think every night scene is day for night.
One of your day for night scenes.
But her leg has been scratched, right? And she's like showing it to him. And he gets up and takes off. You know, like... and I'm not sure why, like, because it seemed like, I mean, she's showing the inner thigh, and it seemed like maybe if he had, like, she was, I don't know, it's hard to read in, but it seemed like she was looking at him at that time, right?
Right.
And so that was there's obviously sexual tension between the two of them.
Right. I think she was throwing out all the hints for him, and I think he was picking up on them, but then when it came time, she found herself, I don't want to say disgusted, but her Western sensibilities kicked in.
Well, she was returned to the house. She was reminded of civilization, you know, like, so, but, then there's also, I wanted to talk about the nude, swimming scene and how it's, cut against, him hunting. Like, what do you think that represents exactly? You know, I know I've been asking that a lot, but her swimming, is that her like pampered lifestyle or him wanting to provide for her? Because the swimming scene happens after that night scene where he walks off. So does he feel like he needs to provide for her, or you know, what do you think the reasoning is?
Is it like the beauty of both? Like, are we seeing that like there is beauty in this idea of like surviving on the land and like
nature,
hunting and whatnot, combined with like the beauty of like swimming nude in this like pretty clear like water? Like that scene was really pretty to me. Like I thought that scene looked great. Like
I think so. I think the water did look great, but it also looked kind of scary to swim in because of all the grass and who knows what kind of scary animals.
Every bit of this movie looks scary to like walk in or hang out under.
Yeah, back
or near.
Like the most inviting place. No, I think that scene is basically where she finally. I think that's her at her before she reverts back to how she is at the end of the movie and at the beginning of the movie. I think that's whenever she's finally feeling the most comfortable. Like there's no civilization anywhere around. She doesn't feel judged. She's
nude.
She's nude. No. She gets completely completely naked, which she doesn't do the whole movie. She's very careful to always be clothed and look nice as much as she can, considering she's in the outback. That's the first time and the only time in the whole movie we see her like let her guard down. And then we see later on that there was more to that scene. We only see when it's actually in there the first time, we only see her swimming by herself. But later on, we see other images of that same scene in that same location where they were all swimming naked at various points together, right?
Well, I think that's...
is that a memory?
That's not a memory. That's an alternative.
You think?
Yeah. She's with her husband in the future. And
we can talk about the ending.
Yeah. She's regretting... or she's like, this is another. I could have had that life.
See, yeah, it definitely is that too. So you don't think it was also just like a memory? She was like, I missed that time, or do you think it was like something that never happened at all?
She wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
She wouldn't have
wishful thinking, or not wishful thinking, but like imagining.
Yeah.
Like if I'd have just let my guard down around him, we could have been happy.
That could have been my life.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that is it? Do you think that she would have been happier and prefers, like, I think that's a little bit too simple of a
it's that
of a theme, of an idea of like, oh, she belonged in the Outback, or she was happier in the Outback and wishes she was there.
To me, that's not what it's saying.
Nah, I don't think so.
To me, it's so it's like you break up with a girl, and 10 years down the road, you look at your life and you think, oh, well, my life would have been so much different if I had been with her. And oftentimes you look back on it fondly and think, maybe I should have done that. And so it could either be that, or it could also be just an alternative, like this could be your life, or this could be your life. This is the wild life, and this is the civilized life, right?
I think it's like it shows a bit of like, now that she's experienced this, like there is a bit of like boredom with like the mundane like urban life. Like I think her husband comes home and he's talking about like bank accounts and like financial stuff, right? And like stuff that didn't matter at all, like when they're out in the wilderness, and like more than it's like, oh, I wish I had stayed there, I wish I was there, or anything like that concrete or clear or like on the nose. It's more like, it's really just like a longing for something not quite so like so clean and urban, like,
right?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I think so. And on top of that, I also think it's just like a missed opportunity, right? Like you ever look back at something and you wish like, man, I should have just done it differently. Like not necessarily my whole life would have been different, but like while I was there for that time, I could have been better to that person, or I could have enjoyed myself more, or I could have been more honest with those feelings that I was feeling at the time that I was too scared to admit to myself, which I think in her case.
Yeah.
Which is not so much like, oh, I could have been like a wild Aboriginal girl out there in the Outback with my brother. I don't think that's ever a realistic daydream, but I think maybe she looks back at the time when she was there, because she can't not remember that, and think, yeah, I should have been more honest with who I was at the time. Like, I could have had a better, fonder goodbye. He could have ended up better in that, for taking good care of us. I think it's more of just like regret for how she acted and how she was too scared to let herself go.
I think I see it, and I mean, both of our views are valid because it is open to interpretation, but I see it more, and maybe it says more about us personally than it does about anything about the movie, but I see it as regret, and like, this is a path I could have gone down, or it's a theme of the movie is like wild versus nature, or city versus nature. Like, this is who she could have been if she had stayed wild. But I did want to get back to the whole Aborigine stuff before we got to the end of the movie. But so she's swimming naked, and it seemed like things were going well before, so that might be a good point as well. So things were going well. This is her in her most wild when she's swimming naked. And then the Aborigine talks to the black-haired woman. You guys remember that? But it seemed like, so, and then the camera just keeps panning and follows the black-haired woman. And the Aborigine could have taken him to that like little village, right? But he takes him somewhere else. Why didn't he just take her? That was when I thought the Aborigine was up to something, like.
Yeah. Well, I thought that, but also there was a sense, like, when he was talking to that, he like wasn't that interested in what she was saying, and like in a sense of like, I don't remember him paying much attention to her and just kind of blowing her off, like, no. And then we go and we follow him in and see what happens, and I don't know what the deal is with the Aborigine people that are there helping those people. Like, they're there making the statues. Mm-hmm. Are they workers? Are they hired?
Like cheap labor?
Yeah,
or are they, the cheap labor being exploited?
Yeah, I assume that's just like kind of an example of like the just like white people, maybe not necessarily taking advantage of the Aborigines, but like
cheap labor.
Yeah, I think it seemed like he was kind of rejecting her. Like, I don't know if she was trying to convince him to like come help and join their little workforce, and he was kind of not having any of it. Like, no thanks, not interested. And I think I got the vibe that like he knew that like what's going on there isn't like the best for like his people. Like, I'm not going to go as far to say it's like I think they were slaves. I just think they were, being exploited in some way.
Yeah, I think you're right, and just only in retrospect, because when I was watching it, I didn't understand that, and they don't necessarily. All of a sudden, there's this white lady there, and you're like, okay, and then why don't they go? I didn't pick up on that, but that makes sense, Justin.
Yeah, and I guess before we move on too much from like the whole like sexual attraction thing, I just like I think the most genius scene in the movie is when they get to the house at the end and they're just hanging out there. There's that section where like they're just pacing back and forth, like her and the Aborigine, and they're kind of like crossing paths and like not talking to each other, but it's very clear that they're both like thinking about each other, like actually without any sort of like dialogue or anything. Like, I love that scene because it like perfectly portrays like the emotion and the mood, and like it's like full of like sexual tension.
Right. Do you think if so he goes off, he's hunting the cow and he wrestles it, and then the white guys show up and do their wasting of killing, and then he goes off and he lays down in the bones and kind of gets all dressed up, and then he comes back and he's trying to woo her in the wild ways or whatever. Do you think if he had just like kissed her, like instead of he woos her in a different way, like if he had just kissed her or approached it in that way, like she would have accepted it? Did she reject him because of what he looked like and what he was doing? I think that's certainly part of it, like at the very least, if not entirely. But yeah, it's like she's not used to that at all. She doesn't understand it, and he looks like, to her, scary, and a little bit. At first, it was kind of creepy because she is topless, and then he just sneaks up kind of in his thing, and his eyes are really big, and he's like peeking through the slats in the windows and the doors, and I could see how that would be scary at first.
It would scare me.
Yeah,
terrify me.
Yeah, and she doesn't. Yeah, so you're right. She didn't understand it, and she seemed almost kind of callous to it as well. Like, especially so, he does this dance for hours and hours, and then in the morning they find that he is dead.
Yeah, did he kill himself, or did he die from dancing so long and not? I don't know if you could die for that.
Well, at first I thought he hung himself, but then it looked like his arms were in the tree. Maybe they just couldn't do the hanging scene, but he was like hanging in the tree with his arms like on either side. Mm-hmm. And I thought that he had hung himself, but you can't really tell if that's what had happened or if he'd slit his wrists or something along those lines. Why would he do that too? Like, over rejection? Is that a thing that happens, or is it just because he's a teenager, he gets rejected and so he feels he must commit suicide?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do not know. I won't pretend to know about what happens in their culture, but I kind of took it more as like, just like not necessarily betrayal, but he's just deeply saddened. Like, he shared a connection with these people. He saved them. He put himself out there for a long time in like a really long, extravagant ritual, and was met with like fear and callousness and like the sense of superiority that she has,
and unwillingness to accept him for who he is and his culture.
I think that has something to do with it.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up, but I just assumed it was a cultural thing of like you put yourself out there for the person that you want to be with, and if that doesn't happen, that's like a huge slight or a huge like embarrassment, and
you'd have to be really sure before you put yourself out there if you're gonna if you have to commit suicide afterwards.
Yeah.
The other thing is, so the little boy says he's dead, and they go out and see him in the tree, and she does not show very much. I mean, she doesn't show very much emotion in general in this movie. Like after the father kills himself, and I can understand that, but they never really talk about it. But she just kind of wipes away an ant off of his body, and it's not really. Maybe she's going through PTSD and she's removed from it. But like, what do you think?
I know she did the same thing to the picnic blanket at the beginning of the movie with the ants.
Yeah. Maybe she regards him as nature. He is part of nature. I don't know. It's very complicated, I think, ending, and I mean, just lots of stuff to read into it.
Mm-hmm. And I think what I took away from it, not so much the fact that she did pull the ants or pick the ants off his body, but the nature and the way she did it. The coldness of it, I guess. Mm-hmm. The indifference to what she's looking at is kind of what I guess moved me about the scene. Mm-hmm. Is because this guy just got done putting himself out there in a way that I've never done, and and at the end she doesn't really have much to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know what to make of her lack of reaction to that, or like the lack of reaction to like the dad. Like they, as you said earlier, they don't seem to be too shook up about it. She doesn't. The little boy is more understandable because he's a little boy.
Yeah,
but.
Well, and we also don't know her story previous to the dad. Like we don't know what's the story between her and the dad. Like maybe the dad's not somebody that she was particularly upset to see go away. I don't know. Like that's the way
she wasn't close to him.
Yeah. But then with the Aborigine, like he kind of helped her out, and there should be a little bit more reaction to it.
Yeah.
I did want to talk about also the weather balloon scene too.
Yeah, well, I think in general, maybe we talk about this as like something we talk about was like once they're lost, outside of like the opening sequence and the end, there are several glimpses of like quote civilized, cultured people like I guess there are like mostly white people, if not all white people, that we meet. One of those is we've already talked about the black-haired lady and the people making statues. Mm-hmm. We meet them. We've talked about the guys that come in and hunt. We've talked about the guy that won't help them, like that says like the mine's closed. Mm-hmm. And then we also get this scene with like the people with the balloons. They seem like scientists or something doing some sort of like experiment. And so I don't know. What do you want to talk about with those?
I mean, just in general, I think that's kind of where the sexual tension starts too in the other people's story, or maybe it had already started in our like the main character's story. But like that was all every single man, is like waiting for this lady to cross her legs, to get a
her
glimpse.
shirt to open a little bit more.
Yeah. I'm not sure what he's saying here either.
It's pretty grotesque when they're doing it, right? Like I don't get the vibe that I got the vibe that it was supposed to. I wasn't supposed to feel good about it or find it funny or anything like that.
I think it's just kind of opening the door to the idea of sexual attraction and the way it's handled.
Yeah, the way it's handled.
Yeah, like these guys are kind of ogling this woman, and then cut to the story where our two main characters keep looking at each other, and it's not super tactful there either,
It's not tactful, but
it's more tactful
with them being
it's more
teenagers.
Yeah,
and in this like sort of like sexual height and like part of like point of like sexual discovery. Mm-hmm. I think what it does for me is highlights their innocence, right? Because all these scientists are like grown men, and it doesn't feel that great to have them like, staring at some woman's body parts, and like because we know that they're old enough they're older, they understand.
She's not
more.
a woman to them. She's
They're
just,
quote unquote civilized.
Yeah.
She's just a object essentially.
Yeah, and then we have the kids the Aborigine and the girl, and it seems, it seems more innocent.
And the relationship is better. I never got a predatory sense from the Aborigine until he comes in at the very last. But I don't even think he means that as predatory.
Right.
Yeah. There's a sense of, is he gonna like come after her and like have his way with her? But he never does. Like, so it's not too predatory.
Yeah, just at the very beginning part of that, where he's kind of coming in, she's naked and she's rushing to put her shirt on. But you're like, well, I don't know what's happening here, and then he just dances the whole time.
Yeah.
But like
But he's also a gentleman. Other than that dance being creepy to Westerners, he's always a gentleman. More of a gentleman than those guys staring at that woman were. You know?
Yeah.
So I think he's just trying to say something there, which is just that, like, just because they're civilized, quote unquote, doesn't mean that they're.
Yeah. When the Aborigine had the opportunity, he walks away. You know, like during the movie, and I thought, and I think that scene, the weather balloon scene, is especially relevant. You know, today and with all the stuff that's going on. You know, like, we do not act very well.
Yeah, for sure. And so, on the whole, what do you guys make of like these times in the movies where we see these other people? Because none of like the civilized, cultured people, like the white people, basically, like none of them are like painted in a very good light. None of them are very good people.
We did. Sorry, but we did skip. So the Aborigines, there is a scene with all the Aborigines and the Volkswagen Beetle that happens that we're not. So I'm not sure that. But yeah, sorry.
No, I don't remember that scene too well. Like what happens in it? I know they come to like where
it's
it's
like a
on
group of people.
Yeah, they just
kind of passing through.
fire.
And then something explodes and they all run away. Something
like they're playing with like the
on.
trash. They're playing with like the shell of the car, and then there's also like the dad's body is like been moved and is like
in the tree
thrown into like the bushes, which I don't know if they did that.
Well,
or if like another animal had just like dragged it away or something, and they just kind of stumbled upon it.
Did he look similar? Does it look similar the way he's posed in the it wasn't the? I thought he was in a tree, but did it look similar to the way the Aborigine died, like kind of hanging in the tree like that?
I don't think so. The Aborigine died kind of posed like he was crucified, kind of, whereas like the dad was just like a corpse all laid out in like a not very.
I thought his arms were out, but
it may have been.
Yeah. But what was your question? Back to your question.
I guess all the people we see outside of them, like is there something to the fact that like all of them are bad people? Are we kind of seeing that like these civilized people in their civilization and their civilized worlds, like it creates something in them that makes them like bad, versus like the Aborigine guy who's hunting, like he's mostly good, like if not entirely good, like the whole movie, and doesn't seem to have like noble, doesn't seem to have like flaws that are super noticeable as far as like morality goes.
Not a very good dancer.
And everybody else does. So is that an indictment? Is that a judgment of culture or civilization?
I think that maybe what he's trying to say with the movie as a whole is that maybe society or civilization isn't that great. I mean, would you guys agree with that? Like maybe
sure, absolutely.
We've progressed, but maybe we're not.
Where does that put us? Does that put us? We've progressed technologically and as a civilization, and we've become more like clean and have more functioning tools and buildings and all this stuff. But like, are we necessarily ahead?
Yeah, we're as people closer to being beasts than the Aborigines, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's interesting.
This is why I like the movie, because I think that there's a lot of open questions that you can talk about for a long time.
Sure, absolutely. Like all the white people they run across in the movie, including their own father, are less welcoming and nice to them than this one Aboriginal boy they wander across in the middle of the desert, you know? And you would think the white people would be like, oh, you're lost, let me help you, or let me not harm you. But it seems like everyone they run across is bad news or doesn't seem to care,
Yep.
Yeah, they just get out of the desert and that guy turns them away,
Yeah, like this girl clearly is asking for help and he's just like, don't touch my watering can, little boy. And you're just like, man, what a jerk.
Yeah, for sure. So, any final thoughts on the film? Any specific things that you want to touch on? Anybody?
What do you guys think about the music, real quick? There's like the church music.
I thought the music was great. Does anyone know what that instrument is at the beginning of the movie? The very first.
It's a didgeridoo.
That's what I thought. That's what it sounded like, but I didn't want to sound stupid and say didgeridoo and not be right.
No, I'll take that bullet for you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Except I'm right, I think. I'm pretty sure.
I'm pretty sure you are too. But if you're not, be sure you send all the corrections to Justin.
Yeah, yell at me. But yeah, so I think you're right, Chris, that like talking about the film, I certainly like it more, having talked about it and discussed it and dove into it. There's certainly merit to it, and it's good. I still don't love it. It's still not going to end up being one of my favorite films. I don't know, how long it'll be before I watch it again or have the desire to watch it again. But yeah, talking about it is definitely interesting, and I've fully enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm glad I watched it the second time because I watched it, like I said, once when I was, 19 or 20, something like that. And I enjoyed it immensely more the second time. For
sure. All right. Chris, do you want to tell them what the next Criterion film is going to be?
I sure do. The next one's just a small one. So in 2 weeks, we're going to watch Spine Number 11, The Seventh Seal by Ingmar Bergman. This is our first Ingmar Bergman film, and he's a big one.
Yeah, it's a pretty significant one, like in pop culture and the influence that like just some of the imagery has in it. So, I'm excited to watch it.
I've seen it before, but I'm excited to go back and watch it again.
Same. I've only seen it once, and it was when I was first getting into film and Criterion. So yeah.
I saw it once when I was younger too, and I just couldn't not think of Bill and Ted.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
The whole time I was watching it, so it'll be nice now that it's been. I'm more than 2 decades away from the last time I saw a Bill and Ted movie. So so I'm pretty sure I can enter this without my vision being tainted.
Yeah. For sure. All right. Well, let's do our top 3 for this episode, and I know we're kind of a little bit removed from it, but with the new year, since this is our first Criterion focused episode of the new year, we wanted to do our top 3 Criterion releases of 2017, and so these were we're including everything like updates and
anything that was released in 2017.
Anything that came out. If it was a Blu-ray upgrade, that counts. And I think, I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of just basing this on like how much I love the film, because some of these I haven't been able to buy the Criterion edition or dive into the special features or the see how the transfer looks. So I'm just kind of going on like what films I like the best and are most excited to have on there.
Same here.
Now.
Me too.
So yeah. All right. So Mike, you want to go first?
Sure. I'll go first. So this is a movie that I actually first heard about because Chris bought a poster for it whenever he and I were working in Blockbuster. And this is Blow Up. Great poster. Cool movie. I'm excited that Criterion is finally releasing it. And Michelangelo Antonioni.
Yeah, that's actually on my list too. Blow Up.
Well, okay, so we've all picked Blow Up.
That's one. Yeah. But yeah, it's a super interesting movie. It's one that I think, much like Walkabout, is very interesting to discuss and talk about. And I think that it's sort of that way with all of Antonioni's films, at least the ones that I've seen.
Yeah, that's another one that like has influenced me. The idea that like a group experience, like if I know we don't need to dive into it, but like I tell people about it all the time. If 2 people experience something together, it's real. But if only one person experiences it, is it real? It's just a great movie.
Yeah, and
I think falls in a forest.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think the version of it that exists, or at least the one that I've had prior to this Criterion one coming out, was just a DVD that wasn't that great. It was like one of those cardboard cases
Yeah.
where like
Yep.
the flap flops up,
Right.
flaps up and like holds the cardboard in.
Flops.
Yes. And I just hate those DVD cases so much. So
Me too.
if for no other reason, I'm just happy to have like a very beautifully packaged version of Blow Up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So I guess we covered all of ours.
So yeah, we've all got one, but I don't want to go back to Mike again. So just Chris, you want to give us your next one?
Yeah. My next one is I think that this one might be on multiple people's list as well. But Le Samurai, the ultimate like cool guy, Alan Delon, like he's the original Ryan Gosling, right? Like where he doesn't emote, he just kind of walks around straight faced, and then does cool stuff, I love Herman Melville.
Herman Melville.
Melville. Wait, what is his name?
Jean-Pierre Melville?
Yeah, Jean-Pierre.
Herman Melville
Yeah.
wrote Moby Dick.
I mean, I also like Moby Dick, but Jean-Pierre Melville, I love his movies. I think Le Samurai is just really awesome.
Yeah, that one actually didn't make mine, but I'm happy to have it. That might be one of the Criterions I've owned the longest, was the DVD version of Le Samurai. I've owned it for a long, long time.
That's one of the first Criterions I think I borrowed to watch.
Oh, I gave it to you?
Long time ago.
Yeah.
But yeah,
All right. Well, no, I didn't have it on my list, so you didn't ruin anything.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
cool. All right, well, I'll go up next, and I was just really excited. I didn't expect it at all, because I don't follow the Criterion news too much, but the Before trilogy, that whole box set, I think is great. Like I like Before Midnight a little bit less, but like the first two I think are like amazing films. Like I love the concept, the simplicity of them, like, and to have them like all in one box set. Again, I think those have the cardboard flap cases.
Yeah, at least the first one did.
At least
Before
what the first
Sunrise.
one does. So again, I'm happy to have a non-cardboard flap case. But just to have the movies to upgrade to Blu-ray and have them be in such like a really cool looking package and be all together. And I haven't dove into the special features yet because I haven't been able to buy it. But I don't know. I'm happy.
Yeah, that's actually a big blind spot for me. I have not seen any of them, and I know that I need to. But
Oh man, you do.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
going to be one of those things where like I'm going to watch all three of them, or I don't know.
Yeah, don't wait till we get there because that's going to be like 20 years from now or something, maybe longer. So watch them soon. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Mike.
Okay, so the next movie I have on here is a movie I have not seen in quite some time, but I am excited to dive back into it again. This is The Piano Teacher. This is a movie that I saw on DVD a long time ago, back when I worked at Blockbuster and I could just take home movies. But yeah, I haven't actually seen it in quite a while, and I'm definitely excited to dive back into it. Has anyone seen this?
Nope.
I have seen The Piano Teacher. It's been a while. I remember it being kind of a tough film to watch because of like the content and the subject matter is pretty risque.
I haven't seen it, so don't spoil it. But that's another one. I think I've heard that it's a tough watch, but that it's good.
Yeah, Isabelle Huppert is it her name, right? The main actress. Like everything that she is in is like always pretty interesting, and I enjoy. So, yeah.
All right.
Cool.
All right,
Chris,
is
you
it-
want to go next?
I will. So my third one is Hal Ashby's Being There. I
a
really,
good one.
huh?
That's a good one.
Yeah, I really like this movie. Another simplistic movie with Peter Sellers playing a gardener that kind of stumbles his way into the presidency. But yeah, I think it's. I'm really excited actually to watch it again. So
Yeah, Being There's great.
yeah.
Yeah, it's super good and funny, and I just like had some inspiration on a few pop culture things, like like Arrested Development kind of did the same sort of story in some of their episodes, and yeah, just influential, I
Yeah,
think.
really good. And I like Hal Ashby too.
Yeah, I'm excited for some special features. Although, if I remember correctly, they have like a gag reel at the end of the movie, which is like my least favorite part of the movie. So,
I don't remember the gag reel.
There's like in the credit. It's like during the credits. There's a little like scene of some outtakes of Peter Sellers, and like it really takes me out of the film, and I don't like it. So hopefully there's no like extended gag reel on as a special feature. That'd be awful. I guess I could look it up and find out, but whatever. All right. So my last one, my third one, is Straw Dogs, the upgrade for that. And Straw Dogs is one of my favorite movies altogether. Like, I'm a big Peckinpah fan. Straw Dogs is probably my favorite film of his. Maybe only like second to The Wild Bunch, if second at all. I absolutely love Straw Dogs. I've seen it so many times. I had the DVD version, forever, and just like I've just longed for a Blu-ray of it. And I think like a regular Blu-ray edition of it came out with like a really bad cover art, so I was hesitant to buy it. But to have Criterion update it and give a new Criterion Blu-ray version of one of my favorite films is exciting and amazing. I love it.
Yeah, Straw Dogs is great. I love Straw Dogs. Yep. I'm glad you have it on your list because it wasn't on mine, and I felt terrible.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Straw Dogs.
Have you seen The Wild Bunch?
I have.
Well, that's something.
Yeah. Okay, so I think, is that it? Or Mike, do you have one more, right?
I have one more. His Girl Friday.
Whose?
His.
Oh.
So Howard Hawks, Cary Grant, romantic comedy. So good. It is. Let's see. I saw this probably the same week as I saw Arsenic and Old Lace, and both of them I thought were just fantastic. But I think His Girl Friday is the one that I think I loved more. It was public domain, I think, for a long time because there's several different versions of it, and it took a long time to find a DVD copy that was acceptable. So
and that's all it is.
Yeah, it's all it is, just acceptable. So it's going to be super nice to have a Criterion release of this movie, with some special features that I haven't even looked into yet. But no matter what they are, I'm there for them.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Actually, this is one I did go out of my way to buy. It would have actually, it's like number 4 on my list. If we would have done a top 4, His Girl Friday would have been there for me too. So, yeah. Right. Is that it for top 3?
Yep. Awesome.
That's all I got.
Cool. Well, as always, I'm going to thank you, the listener, for listening to the show. Once again, we're going to thank Mike for being here.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
We'll do it again sometime, probably soon.
Indeed. Okay.
Cool. Well, also, thank you to Jake Wagner Russell for creating our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch. If you want to follow along with the podcast, tell us how you disagree with our reading of Walkabout and how the trees aren't very sexual at all, and there's no sexual.
That's the sexiest tree
tension.
I've ever seen.
That would be a wrong statement, though, because everyone can see very clearly that tree is extremely sexy.
Yeah. Well, if you disagree and want to tell us how we're perverts and out of our mind or something.
That tree is only, that is the sexiest, or the second sexiest tree in cinema. The first being the trees in Wizard of Oz.
All right. Yeah. Well, if you want to contact us, you can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/casuallycriterion podcast. You follow us on Twitter and Instagram at casualcriterion. You can email us directly at casuallycriterion@gmail.com. And don't forget to go onto iTunes, rate us and review us. Rate us 5 stars. That gets us up in the rankings and more people to see us and help us grow the show. And, let us know what you think. We just like to read the feedback as much as we like to see 5-star reviews. So
Before we go, I thought of another sexy tree. There's also the one in The Evil Dead that attacks that girl.
Oh, that's not sexy, though.
No, it's not. I'm just saying it's a sexual tree.
Oh, it's a sexual tree, okay.
all right.
Anyway.
Fair enough. Well, on that note.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.